remember now. My mind. God knows. Somebody I talked to this week was needing prayer. Anyway, y'all don't have those senior moments, do you? those CB radios. There's a lot of static. Okay, we'll go on. We'll make it. And the lean and the ill-favored kind did eat up the first 7 fat kind. And when they had eaten them up, it could not be known that they had eaten them. So he's added that in there. These old sick-looking cows, even after they ate the healthy ones, still looked the same. Didn't even change them at all. And that's going to be important later on. And he said he awoke. Then he went back to sleep, and he said, behold, 7 ears came up one stalk, full and good, and behold, 7 ears withered and blasted with the east wind sprung up after them. And the thin ears devoured the 7 good ears. And I told this unto the magicians, but say, no, there ain't nothing to it. But if he just pushed Joseph aside and said there's nothing to it, he was going to have consequences. Well, wouldn't it have been easier for him to have them 7 good years and lean on that and say, boy, life is good? And then when the bad years happened, all of a sudden, the bad years would be so bad that people would forget about the good years. Okay, let's go on. He said, there will rise after them 7 years of famine, and all the plenty shall be forgotten in the land of Egypt. And the famine shall consume the land, and the plenty shall not be known in the land by reason of that famine following, for it shall be very grievous. It's going to be hard to bear. And not only is it going to affect Egypt, but it's going to affect the whole land. See, there's that big purpose of God, bigger than Joseph. It's not just for Joseph, but it's for Egypt, that they might see God's hand. And it's also for his family back in the land of Canaan. And for that, the dream was doubled unto Pharaoh twice, for emphasis. I don't know if Mom ever called Charles the way she called me, but if Mom ever said John Allen, that second time was for emphasis. You better come on. You better take aware of what I just said. I think she did too, call him. I think I heard that a few times myself. So same way it is with a dream. It was given to him twice for emphasis, to know that this is going to come to pass and it is of God. Of course, under the law, they believe that out of the mouths of 2 or 3 witnesses, let every word be established or confirmed. So this is a confirmation here that this is going to happen, that it's going to be of God, and it's going to begin very soon. Now, look what Joseph does. He doesn't just quit right there. Wouldn't that been enough to interpretation? That's all Pharaoh asked for, was an interpretation. But he gets pretty bold here. Here's a Hebrew slave talking in front of the man that has the most power in the world at this time. He said, I'm also going to tell you how to fix this. What's Joseph doing? He's speaking out of full assurance of his faith in the God Jehovah. That God, the God of Israel, not only gives him the interpretation, but also gives him how to fix this. His works is following his faith. It's enough to stand up there in front of Pharaoh and say, this is what it means. Because if this is not what it means, I guarantee you Joseph would lose his head. But there's his faith in God. Those 11 years in prison, or the 11 years from a slave, and then those 2 years sitting there, I don't think it was idle time. I think Joseph was talking to God. Did he get tired? Did he get weary? Did his faith get low at times? Yeah, probably did. He's a human. He's in the dungeon, remember? When they went and got him, it said they brought him out of the dungeon. But I think he had that faith in God that those dreams that he gave to Joseph as a young boy was his anchor to hold him, to let him know that God had called him for a purpose. And of course, the Spirit of God was moving on him to give him this. I don't think Joseph just came up with this off the top of his head. I think that wisdom of God was flowing through him, and he began to speak as a representative, as a minister of God, of Elohim, the God of Israel. And so Pharaoh's going to see that. He said, now, therefore let Pharaoh look at a man discreet and wise and set him over the land of Egypt. He didn't say, me, I'll be a good one to do this. There's that humility. I don't even know if Joseph wanted the job. He's just got the answer that God's given through him. Let Pharaoh do this and let him appoint officers over the land and take up the fifth part of the land of Egypt in the 7 plenteous years, 20%. It was said that the Egyptian farmer gave 10% tax anyway on what he grew. So another 10% wouldn't be that bad. Well, I guess if he was a farmer, it would be. 20% would be pretty rough. But if you knew, if your Pharaoh asked for it in order to keep the land from starving to death, maybe it wouldn't be that hard to give it up. Because this is going to take everybody to believe this. That's how much power Pharaoh had. When Pharaoh said it, they did it. So 20% he was going to set aside. And still in a time of good, in a time of plenty, 20% probably doesn't hurt that much. But they see that it's going to pay off. He said, and let them gather all the food of those good years that come and lay up corn under the hand of Pharaoh. And let them keep food in the cities. And that food shall be for putting store to the land against the 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land perish not through the famine. Well, that story could have ended right there. Joseph's done a good job. He's been faithful. He gave to him the message of the dream, the interpretation of it. Plus, he had works that followed his faith now, and he's given him a plan of action to fix this. So God's not finished yet, though. Man, there's times when I think, well, boy, that worked out pretty good. God, you did good on that. That worked out just perfect. God's not finished yet. Hang on. They still got more in plan. There's a family that's back in Canaan that's going to end up with Joseph that Joseph's got no idea about. That family in Canaan has no idea what's going on. Remember, we left them over there at the end of 37 or 37 or 38. 37. Left him over there, the family over there. Remember, they were in mourning. They was trying to come. All along, them boys knew that they were the ones that had lied and done this. And they were sitting there comforting Dad. Oh, Dad, it'll be all right. You know, you still got us. And there was Jacob. I said Joseph. Jacob mourning over the loss of his son Joseph that he loved so much. So that's where they're at. They don't even know what's going on. But now the Egyptians have an understanding of what's about to happen. And God's not finished. God's fixing to deal with Pharaoh some more. And the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said unto his servants, can we find such a one as this is, a man in whom the Spirit of God is? Well, they recognized something, didn't they? Pharaoh, and that was God opening his spiritual eyes, was beginning to see something in Joseph that he understood as the Spirit of God. If he only knew which God that he was talking about. Did they quit their idolatry? No, they were still idolaters. But yet they recognized that this was Elohim, the God of Israel. That this was Joseph's God. Oh, let the world see that. They may not understand it. They may not quit their evil ways, but let them recognize God working through us. Because if they hang around us enough, they're going to understand that this is a true God, and I want to know him. So God's working on Pharaoh. Now, whether he come to know God of Israel as the only true God, probably not, but who knows? And the Spirit of God's in him. Pharaoh said unto Joseph, for as much as God hath shown thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art. Now, look at this job advancement here. So remember now, he's come from slave to a high position over Potiphar's house, back into prison, but yet over the prisoners there. I don't know if that was too much of a job advancement. It is in God's eyes. All the way now to in the court of Pharaoh, and he's about to be put up into the second highest position in the land, and him not even Egyptian. Thou shalt be over my house, and according unto the word shall all my people be ruled. Unto thy word shall all my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than thou. Psalm 75, 6 and 7. They said this is the only place that this word promotion is found in the King James. He said, for promotion cometh neither from the east, nor from the west, nor from the south, but God is the judge. He putteth down one, and he setteth up another. So if you get promoted in this life, it's not for what you've done, it's from what God's done for you as a believer. So make sure he gets the honor and the glory of it. Pharaoh said unto Joseph, see, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand, put it upon Joseph's hand, arrayed him in vestures of fine linen, put a gold chain about his neck, and made him to ride in the second chariot which he had. And they cried before him, bow the knee, and he made him ruler over all the land of Egypt. And he didn't let it go to his head either. He could have. The human side of him could have really went and said, look what I've done. But he was a servant of the Most High. He kept his humility here. Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I'm Pharaoh, and without thee shall no man lift up his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name, that big old long name there, and he gave him to wife, give him the daughter of Potiphar, a priest of On. And so Joseph was, verse 46, Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt. And he did exactly that. He took those 7 years of good came about. He stored up that 20% of it, that fifth part of all that came into the land. And not only that, but look what else God did for him. He gave him some kids. Verse 50, and then Joseph was born 2 sons before the years of famine came, which Aseneth, the daughter of Potiphar, a priest of On, bare unto him. Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh. For God, said he, hath made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. There again, giving God credit for everything. Made me forget about the bad things. That's God's faithfulness. That's God's providence. That's God's sovereign power over Joseph. Boy, he could have harbored on that. That would have eaten him like an old canker. Look, my brother's done to me. Look where I'm at in prison. Look at that. But God had a plan for his life. Through all the life of Joseph, God had a plan. And now he was in a position where, not that he forgot about it, but that he forgave them. He didn't hold that bitterness up there to his family. And so to remind him, he names his firstborn Manasseh. And the name of the second, he called Ephraim. Here again, giving God honor and glory for it. For God hath caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. Not only has he blessed me that I have forgiveness for the past, but I also recognize where I'm at now as the hand of God in my life. Well, it's the story of us. That's the story of the redeemed right there. That's what God has done for us. So the 7 years of plenty that was in the land of Egypt were ended, and then those bad years start. The 7 years of dearth began to come, according as Joseph had said, and the dearth was in all lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. That's what life's all about, ain't it? Bread. I love it. I gotta have my bread. That's the staple of life, though, is bread. For the people then, especially, that was their mainstay. They didn't have bread, they was going to die. And so here Egypt had it, and there's God's faithfulness to Joseph and all that he was doing, giving God honor. Egypt was being blessed. Potiphar had done noticed that, and when Joseph was that one in his house, he said he noticed that he was being blessed for everything that Joseph did. God blessed him, and it blessed Potiphar. Matter of fact, said old Potiphar didn't even have no concern over his money or nothing. Said all he made sure was that he had food sitting in front of him. That's all he cared about. Everything else he let Joseph deal with it. He left all that he had in Joseph's hand and knew not all he had, save the bread which he did eat. The most important thing to him was the bread. And so here it was to them also. Not to them also just in Egypt, but to Joseph's family, which was in Canaan also, which we'll learn later. When all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread, and Pharaoh said unto all the Egyptians, go unto Joseph, what he saith to you do. He's been faithful so far, we might as well see this through. Everything's going just like he said, so hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Joseph's going to deal with this. And the famine was over all the face of the earth, reached out to the land of Canaan too. And Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold unto the Egyptians, and the famine waxed sore in the land of Egypt. He was making Pharaoh money too. So he was, yeah, but I don't have the money, but I got to have that bread. What am I going to do? You got kids, hadn't you? You got land, hadn't you? So, man, the kingdom of Egypt was growing in might and power and dollar signs and everything else. And all the countries came into Egypt to Joseph for to buy corn because that the famine was so sore in all the lands. So that's going to set up Joseph's family too to come to Egypt. So remember, the story is a lot bigger than just Joseph. So here we are. But that's the way God works. Ephesians 3:20-21. Now unto him that is able to do exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that worketh in us, and to him be glory to the church, in the church by Christ Jesus through all ages, world without end. Amen. So he went above and beyond for Joseph. And that's what God does. And that's kind of what that old saying that Solomon used over there in Ecclesiastes about casting your bread upon the water, that you'll get a return for it if you'll do it trusting God. And God will do above, exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think. That's who God is. Being a faithful, call to discipleship here says, being a faithful disciple of Jesus Christ requires enduring the difficult times, knowing that at God's appointed time, victory will come. Hang on to what God has given to you. Hang on. And there again, is this not what God has given to the church? Is what he gave to Joseph, the power, the authority that he spoke? They knew that this was of the Spirit of God, the true God, because of the power and authority. Well, that's what Christ told us in the Great Commission. He said, all power is given unto me, all power of authority. He's got the power and he's got the authority to back it up too. And he said that's what he gives to us. I believe that's the keys of the kingdom of heaven. And he told us to go out and to baptize and to preach and make disciples. And then he gives us that promise. He said, and lo, I'll be with you to the very end. Well, God was with Joseph, never left him, even there in the prison. God was there. Even in the high times, when he was before Pharaoh, before Potiphar, God was there. But also in the low times. You know, I think when old Joseph was in that old deep hole that his brothers chunked him in, I think God was there with him. I think he knew that he had a plan for him. He held on to that God had given to him, that those dreams from his boyhood. But we serve the same God, the same sovereign God, the same God of providence and faithfulness. And what he started in us, he said he'd finish. We'll just remain faithful and believe in him and trust him, just like Joseph's doing. You never know. You never know what God is doing for you. It may seem like a bleak and bad time, but how it might benefit you later on, and not just you, but others. Joseph had no idea that this was going to reach all the way out to his family to bring them back in. Or did he? Did he remember that dream, the first dream that he had over there as a boy? To be continued.